In the year 2024, I think we have lost sight of how dangerous it is to be pregnant. In prior centuries, pregnancy and childbirth was one of the most dangerous things that women experienced, short of famine and war. It was incredible, and maternal mortality and neonatal mortality was a dramatically large figure, like it still is in third world countries now. Our medical care has advanced so much such that a maternal death happens, but it's a very rare thing. Neonatal death happens a little bit more frequently, but these are rare occurrences. And so people have come to think of labor and delivery like a big living room. Like, we'll go, everybody can come, say hi to mom, we'll have a baby, they'll play the nursery tune, everybody will be happy, and that's great because very often it works like that.
Every time there is a delivery, the expectation is that things are going to go well and that we're going to have a healthy baby and a healthy mother. So since that happens 90% of the time, life is good for OB-GYNs 90% of the time, but that 10% of complication or sadness, that's the hard part.
Texas has always been supportive of medicine. That's one of the reasons that I stayed to practice there. Houston is home to the largest medical center in the world, and certainly we have so many other cities with wonderful medical facilities. We were fortunate enough to have tort reform that was passed, which was a huge protection, particularly in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. But as of late, with the creation of some of these laws, it has become a very unfriendly place, particularly in obstetrics and gynecology.
These laws have put women who can get pregnant in danger of bodily harm.
I have never had conversations with patients the way I have in the last 2 years about their own safety, about having a pregnancy in the state of Texas. Never. They're worried that we won't tell them the truth. They're worried that if they were to get sick, that we would be prohibited from treating them in the normal standard of care way. They worry that if they do need a termination, that they will be prohibited from leaving the state of Texas in order to do that.
So patients that deal with complications as it relates to carrying a pregnancy, which can include hemorrhage, needing a blood transfusion, being at risk for reactions to a transfusion, dealing with infections that may impact their pelvic organs, or dealing with injury, damage to their pelvic organs. Patients can deal with complications as it relates to preeclampsia, new cardiovascular issues that can come up as it relates to pregnancy, insults to their kidneys. There can be lots of lasting physical impacts from pregnancy complications that patients may deal with for the rest of their lives, not to mention the emotional impacts of dealing with pregnancy complications.
So recently I had a patient who was born got her congenital adult cardiologist to assess her cardiac status, and he determined that the chances of death, should she continue with pregnancy, could be as high as 50%. We informed her of this. We also got a maternal fetal medicine consult and informed the patient of this. Now, we still have people in the state of Texas who have the skills to perform terminations, but there was no place where I could tell her that she could go because we simply have no way to perform terminations in Texas at this point.
I think if I were getting pregnant in the state of Texas right now, I would want to have a conversation with my obstetrician about different complications that may arise and how they feel about caring for a patient in those situations, how comfortable they feel with the current laws. What are their options they feel like they could provide me under the laws that stand for the state of Texas.
So let's put yourself in a physician's shoes, all right? You have a patient who has a major issue. all right? She has uncontrolled hypertension, all right? And she has kidney damage from this. And continuing the pregnancy is only going to worsen her kidney damage and worsen her hypertension. And it's been recommended that she needs a termination of pregnancy. So here are your choices, all right? You can go through with this, and you can risk life imprisonment. You can risk $100,000 fine and loss of your license, as well as anyone around, whether it's a hospital employee, whether it's a relative of the patient who hears about this, can then bring another suit against you, all right? And yet, you're not protected by your malpractice insurance carrier or by your institution. Would you want to do that? Most people don't understand, and many don't realize, that if you have civil litigation brought against you, or that you are charged with a crime in a situation like this, that your malpractice carrier or the institution with which you're affiliated will not have your back.
Perhaps something not spoken about a whole lot is the trauma that patients can face at the time of delivery, or as it relates to complications that came up when they were trying to deliver their baby, that may even cause them to not want to pursue a future pregnancy because they're dealing with that PTSD from the trauma.
There's a lot to unpack in that statement. Mental health is health, right? Even in a routine pregnancy, we know 15% of women suffer from postpartum depression. I can only imagine somebody who carries a pregnancy that was never going to survive. That rate is higher, right? We see women have postpartum depression that leads to suicide. So there's so many repercussions of forcing someone to carry this pregnancy to the point. The second part of that, just from a health standpoint, pregnancy itself is dangerous. Being pregnant, you have a 30x time of a blood clot versus non-pregnant. We talked about my patient and this life-threatening condition that would have happened that would have caused a hysterectomy. But just other things, if high blood pressure pregnancy, it is, I take care of a lot of older mothers. Preeclampsia or high blood pressure is a real risk. A woman who develops preeclampsia has future increased risk of any cardiovascular mortality. 1 in 3 women die of heart disease. So you can actually say that forcing someone to carry a viable pregnancy that leads to potentially preeclampsia, we've probably taken years off that woman's life. So I would argue that these are not laws that are protecting the sanctity of life. They're actually shortening or hurting life. In this scenario, we have 2 lives. We have a mom's life and a baby's life. If that baby's life is not viable, my number one priority is that mom's life. Right. And so that's the way I practice. It's the way a lot of my colleagues practice. Again, the majority of OB-GYN do not perform elective abortions. Right. And all these scenarios I'm talking about are not abortions by what the average person thinks about. They're medical complications that need care because that woman is my patient, and my first loyalty is to her.
The problem is that there are so many varieties of disaster that it is hard to define and make rules. There's too many gray areas. There's a combination of factors in each situation that is individual, like a footprint, and can't be codified.
If I cannot give my patient the full spectrum of consultation on risks, benefits, and alternatives, then we have short-circuited the informed consent procedure. And this may be the Texas legislature practicing medicine without a license, frankly.